Information. If it exists in writing, we print it. If it exists online, we update it. If it exists on mobile, we notify. If it exists in video, we show it. If it exists in audio, we play it. In the past, the news had to wait for a paper to print for it to happen. Today, news happens in real time. It's analyzed, edited, and published immediately by us, your neighbors, and of course, you. Wherever you are, you write, edit, give opinions, share photos, and make the news happen. This is why a paper needs to be on print, on screen, and on your phone. Wherever you are, your news has its pulse in the community. The Boca Raton Tribune. We are much more than just a newspaper. We are your closest neighbor.
And welcome to another special event, the Boca Raton Tribune 360, where we're talking to the candidates running for city council. Today, I'm speaking with Brian Stenberg, who is running for seat D in the Boca Raton City Council elections that will take place March 9th. Brian, thank you so much for taking your time and talk to us. How are you?
Hey, Pedro, thanks. Very well. Thanks for asking. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So for those that don't know who you are or are trying to learn more about you as they go ready to go vote on the 9th, start off by introducing yourself a little bit. What do you do? How long have you been in Boca and things like that?
Sure. So I've lived in the Boca Raton area for close to 30 years. My wife, Jennifer, and I live in Boca Square. We've owned our home there for the last almost 24 years, 25 years, somewhere around there. We're raising 4 kids. We got 2 at the University of Florida, one at Dreyfus School of the Arts and one at Bach School of the Arts, both up in West Palm Beach. I have a small company here in Boca Raton that's it's been here since '92. I've been with it since '94, but we manage and develop medical office buildings. I've been a partner here since about 2005, and I run the entire operation. So I really love Boca Raton. I've been a part of the community for a long time and enjoy the opportunity to do what I'm doing right now and campaign and hopefully serve in a much deeper level. Yeah,
no, for sure. I appreciate coming on. It's really great to have everybody come on and do this, especially during like COVID and we weren't able to meet face to face. So this is a great thing. But so tell us a little bit about your public service experience, any community civic engagements you've been in,
sure.
Things like that.
Sure. So I've been a member of the Federation of Boca Raton Homeowners Associations for the last few years and serving on the board. I'm also in the Rotary Club of Boca Raton Sunset. I'm the chapter treasurer and the club treasurer. For a very long time, I've been involved with what's called the Boca Square Civic Association, which is not a homeowner association. It's a local civic association that would help to organize neighbors to work on various projects and encourage civic engagement in our neighborhood. I have been actively involved in a lot of little projects in my neighborhood over the years. One of the things I really like to point to is my involvement with Addison Meisner Elementary School. In particular, a few years ago, about 3 years ago, there was talk about rebuilding the school, which is on Southwest 12th Avenue, a little bit south of Palmetto Park Road. Yeah. And there was part of that talk was to put the school over in Sugar Sand Park. And I thought it was a good idea when I first heard it. And then I thought again, and I realized that would take a walkable, bikeable school out of our neighborhood. There's always so much emphasis on trying to get people out of their cars and trying to encourage, getting outside and walking and biking and running and whatever. And I figured that the school ought to stay in the neighborhood. And so I put together a community meeting and a presence on Nextdoor, emails, phone calls, attendance at meetings at the city and at the Beach and Park District and at the school district. And after a long slog, we got the Beach and Park District to say no to the offer. The school district chose to rebuild the school in place, and now it's going to be open for school in August. So we're very excited about having it in our neighborhood. Some people are not excited because there's school traffic that is along with it. But hopefully our our neighbors and our neighborhood association and the city will be able to work together to work with the parents who are working to get their kids to school on time and away from school when things are over with at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So for us that don't know, can you tell us why you decided to run for election?
Yeah. So about 20 years ago, I participated in Leadership Boca, which is a great program from the Boca Raton Chamber of Commerce. It gives you a nice behind the scenes look at how the city works, how it works with the county, and just really basic things about how infrastructure works. Where does your water come from? Where does the sewer go when you flush the toilet? What happens to all the garbage that we produce? Who oversees all this stuff in the various departments, and who are the elected officials, and so on. So I was encouraged to get involved at some point. Now, back then, my wife and I were busy producing our children, and we were in the throes and thick of that. So there was no way that I would want to do it. Although I know some folks on the council now who've thrown themselves into it and have little kids, and I applaud them because it ain't easy. And so. I worked and we raised our children and got that. And I got to the point where a couple of my kids were a little bit older and out of the house. And I said, you know what? This is the time that I'm going to do it. And I started to build the momentum toward running. And I saw an opportunity this year for 2021. And I actually applied for the open temporary seat C when the council decided to fill it as Councilman Rogers had been deployed to Qatar, and I, along with 31 other people, applied for it. And I wasn't appointed, but one of the comments I made during that interview was to say that I'm really grateful when I looked at the fact that there were 31 other people in our community who signed up to try to get that job. In the past, I think you would have had a handful of people who showed up for that, but dozens of people who are truly dedicated to making our community better and participating in it is a really good sign that we've got a volunteer force among us, and I think it's really important to encourage that volunteer force to step up, to take part in civic life here in Boca Raton. If it turns out that person is going to run for office, then that person ought to run for office too. And so, and what I've found so far is that the campaign, the process of the campaign, the planning, everything, the fundraising, the speaking, the interviews, all that stuff is a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. And, but I have to tell you that I very much enjoy speaking with people. I very much enjoy talking about, what's everybody's vision for Boca Raton? What do we want to see right now? What do we want to see 20 years from now? What do we want to see 100 years from now? And, I think there's a lot more awareness out in the world that people need to do that. People need to step into a position of some sort and participate. And honestly, the more participation we can have with something, the smoother it's going to go. And so I'm still really excited about the decision that I made and the support that I've had from my family and from my friends and from a whole lot of people that I've spoken with in this whole campaign.
That's awesome. So I guess the next question kind of goes hand in hand is
Sure.
Why do you think city government is so important?
Oh my goodness, are you kidding? So I tell you what, when I'm out on the campaign trail and I'm talking to people in their front yards, I bend over and I slap the sidewalk and I said, this is why city government is so important, because this is what you're paying for. I'm paying for it. You see exactly where your money goes when you're living in a city and the city is spending your money. You can see where it goes. Federal government, you have no idea where your money goes. State government, in a lot of cases, you don't really see where your money goes either. So it's all about having somebody that you can call. That person. That person may have come to your door and campaigned you and left a phone number or left a door tag, and they left their email address and may have left their phone number. I get emails from people all the time now, and I try to answer most of them. I'm a little bit slow with some of them, but these folks have really good questions, and they want to know. They want to know what I think about a lot of just different issues going on, and pretty broad concepts sometimes too, just about development and environment and traffic and all the things that we deal with every day. Because as soon as you walk out on that street and on that sidewalk, you're walking on our public land that we pay for, and so it's so important to pick the right people who are going to make decisions based on what's legal, based on what's prudent, based on what's going to work to further our community's goals. And I would tell you that I wish people would pay a lot more attention to what's going on locally than to what's happening up in Washington, because it's just far more important.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of what's important and things like that, what would you say if you got elected to city council? What are some things that city council is currently doing that you would try to change?
Well, I would absolutely want to see. I would want to see that everybody on city council has their ear to the ground for looking for stuff that's out there that needs to be fixed. Cognizant of the fact that there's Boca Raton is so much more than just our downtown. Downtown is great, but I'm meeting tonight with some of the neighbors up at Boca Chica, and they often tell me, I've spoken to a lot of people in Boca Chica and in other neighborhoods, North Yamato especially, that tell me, Brian, I feel like we're just ignored. There's not a lot of whenever there's any discussion at City Hall about what's happening in Boca, it's about the downtown. And I feel like there's a lot of neighborhoods in Boca Raton that could probably benefit from having city leadership come through and sit down with neighbors and, again, talk about their vision for their neighborhood. But most of all, what I'd like to do is I'd like to be able to sit with these neighbors and say, okay, the city has resources, but you have resources as individuals and as neighbors to work with each other to help sort out some of your neighborhood's issues. The city will help you with that, but we have to have somebody on the ground down here or up here, as the case may be, who's going to who can give you some guidance. The city's not going to do everything for you and everything for your neighborhood, because a lot of the stuff comes down to people's private property and what they choose to do with it. But still, I think it's important to provide that leadership so that people know that there is somebody in City Hall who's listening to their concerns. And part of that goes back to, when I talk about campaigning, you go out and you campaign, you leave information behind for people, and you have to be accessible to them.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're taking calls at 3 a.m. from a resident who's upset because a street light is out. But when when you get that call and you wake up the next morning and you listen to it, it's important to try to circle around with whoever it is that called you, and what if there's a department that's responsible for that, or if there's a resource you can give to that resident to say, hey, here's something that you could actually handle, and then encourage them to encourage their neighbors to handle stuff. And a big part of this is I'm on my street. I live on 5th Street in Boca Square, and we're friendly with probably 99% of the people who live on our block. There's a couple new folks that I haven't met yet, and we talk to each other. And I think there's a lot of blocks in Boca Raton where the neighbors all talk to each other, and I'd like to see even more of that. And again, part of this as a candidate is going around and talking to people one-on-one and saying, you can do this. You don't need to be afraid of your neighbor. Your neighbor has a lot more in common with you than you may think.
Right.
And so, I would encourage you to do this. And here, take my hand. I'll walk over there with you and we'll say hello together. You might actually make a friend.
Yeah. That's awesome. So talking about some of the issues in the city. So something that's happened for over 10 years, for as long as we've been around in the Boca Tribune, is parking and traffic. what do you think can be done to the situation to alleviate some of the stress that comes with parking and traffic in the city?
You're going to get me to talk about downtown now, aren't you? All right. Well, let's talk about traffic first. So naturally, we have development and redevelopment that occurs in the city and will continue to occur in the city. We are surrounded on three sides by a very large metropolitan area, and Boca Raton happens to be the place where folks going from one part of the metro area to the other part of the metro area, or from our western fringes over to the beaches and to 95 and to Federal Highway and so on. Boca Raton was originally laid out as a car-friendly place, and that's what it was designed around, cars. And I really, it's interesting because I had a really great email from a voter yesterday, and I answered it last night. And she asked a similar question, and she gave out some pretty cool ideas about how cities, not just Boca Raton, but Palm Beach County, the cities in Palm Beach County, cities around the country, the thinking that we need to really do, and the education that we need to work with each other on, to understand that we're out of space for roads, for one thing, here in Boca Raton. The city is mostly built out. There's we're at the phase now where a lot of what you see is redevelopment of stuff, and a great example of that is over at it was our Vita Park of Commerce. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about, Yamato and Commerce.
Yes.
That's all going from not the entire thing, but much of it has been rezoned from commercial to residential, and so now you have apartment buildings going in there. That creates that creates some challenges. It creates some opportunities, and when you see that concentration of new redevelopment going in there, a lot of it ties into people's access to public transportation, and it's going to tie into people's access to restaurants and retail and ways to get around. And the thinking does need to be, how can we actually plan stuff so that the little villages that within the city that we end up creating, how can those be cool?
Right.
I was talking to somebody about that the other day, and you go to Europe, to these old villages and towns where the streets kind of wind around, and there's a little surprise around every corner, and it's almost like a little fantasy land. And then the funny thing is that you come here to the United States and you go to Universal Studios where you go to Harry Potter land, or whatever they call it, and lo and behold, they recreate the same type of thing. I know it sounds a little far-fetched, but some of the little villages that I see popping up in places like Boca Raton, in areas where you've had redevelopment, could almost blend in some of that fantasy and so that you don't have just a grid where you have a bunch of boxes sitting side by side. I think we have the ability to think creatively and to be open-minded about the stuff that people design and what gets approved, and I'm open-minded about it, actually. I don't want to see unfettered development. I don't want to see I don't want to see it to the point where we have complete gridlock on our streets, because I don't think that's conducive to quality of life. But it would be fun to see some creative and interesting ways that designers would envision parts of the city that are being redeveloped. One big thing I always talk about with redevelopment and with new development is that I really would like to see that the city, as the city approves projects, there needs to be a much greater focus on what that project impacts, or how that project impacts traffic and congestion and noise in other parts of the neighborhood. I'm talking, it could be a mile or two away from the actual project. And I know that there's studies out there that the city will do and the developers do and so on. but it would be nice to see action. And that comes from my experience with, I'm a block off of Camino Real. I have a lot of friends who live on Camino Real. Camino has hundreds of homes, single family and apartment homes lining it all the way from, all the way from 2nd Avenue to past 95. And our downtown has grown over the years. We've still got stuff going in there with the Mandarin Oriental and Camino Square, and there will still be development that happens downtown. But Camino Real is basically the same Camino Real it's been for decades and decades and decades, and it hasn't caught up with what we have downtown. So there's a tremendous boost in traffic there, and I really think that it's important that we focus in on that. And part of it, we need to get the county on board. Wherever there's some interaction with the state needs to be on board. And it doesn't mean that we widen it, because it doesn't need to be widened. We need to make it safer. We need to make it so that the drivers who use it aren't creating misery for the people who live and walk and bike on it. Mm-hmm. So as far as parking is concerned, one of the issues that I've heard from people is their distaste for the metered parking. I think we need to see how the metered parking, and this is downtown, so I'm going to talk about downtown a little bit. The metered parking activity that we have, I think that we need to study it and see how it's working, and if it's achieving the goals of turning over parking, so that businesses downtown, especially our small local businesses, are getting the type of traffic they need to help sustain their business. And so I think it's still, a lot of the parking that you have, like on 11th, just south of the Publix, you got to really see how that works out. It's fairly new, so I'm gonna wait and see attitude. As far as other parking downtown, and there are plenty of public lots. There's free lots in the parking garage. The city's going to be building a garage over by the where the Brightline station is going to go next to the library. Mm-hmm. There is some surface parking. I know there's always issues with trying to get private landowners to allow parking on their land. I know that was a subject that came up a long time ago. And outside of downtown, it's interesting because there are parking issues outside of downtown too. Yeah. When you look at a lot of our single family residential neighborhoods, for example, you got people who park on the streets, or you have people who have two tires on the swale and two tires on the roadway. And I think what that comes to, those issues come down to encouraging neighbors to communicate with each other in a civil fashion, if there become issues with things like that. But otherwise, parking is an interesting situation, because we've only been driving cars for the last 100 years or so, and I think our idea of how we design the cities again is based on being car friendly, and we take up a tremendous amount of land for the benefit of our cars. Yeah. Parking lots, parking garages, streets, alleyways, and so on. And that's going to be a subject that people talk about for the next century. But look at all this land that we use for something that, I foresee eventually that the way we get around is going to change. Mm-hmm. Maybe not in my lifetime or your lifetime, but it will change at some point. And so it'd be interesting to see where that all takes us going forward.
Yeah, that's great. Jumping a little bit from just downtown or whatever it is, but let's talk a little bit about FAU. FAU is become a big thing. Everyone knows FAU, and FAU is great, getting more people coming in. But the things happening is there are students, once they graduate, they leave. What are some things that you think the city can do to attract these recent graduates to not look for jobs elsewhere, but actually come and stay and live in Boca Raton?
Well, I'll tell you what, I know of a few city council members who are FAU graduates, and very proud of that fact, and have stayed in town to serve and to help promote what Boca Raton has to offer for young families. I spoke to a landscape architect slash civil engineer, and we talked about not particularly FAU, but the concept is similar with if you're trying to attract employers to town and retain them. A big issue that we always have is, where are the people who move to these places going to live? There is currently a whole lot of people who have moved to Florida, Boca Raton included, out of northern states for a variety of reasons. First of which is usually taxation, and of course you throw COVID onto it. Now everybody has been frozen out of half the country, it seems, and they look at Florida and they look at us, and we're not shivering and freezing to death. And so we are in a position where we do need more housing. We need workforce housing, which is, it's neighborhoods where people feel comfortable and safe and able to raise families, and knowing that you're going to be able to get to work without having to sit in your car for an hour or an hour and a half. And you're not going to have to commute from Boynton Beach or Port St. Lucie or Miami. And I know people who work in Boca Raton who commute from those places, and they spend a lot of time. They listen to a lot of podcasts, and so I really do think from a lot of different standpoints, whether it's from conservation, energy conservation, to simple the mental health of not having to sit in your car for hours on end. I think it's important for us to be open to the idea that for better or for worse, we do have to create more rooftops under which people can live. And that's always very controversial in Boca Raton. And I've talked to a lot of people who have been here for many, many years, and they're very upset at what they see right now. And I understand that. I get, I'm a Florida native. I was born in Hollywood. So I'm a Broward County boy, and I went to the University of Florida, graduated from there, have lived in Florida for my entire life except for 8 months when I lived in New York City a long time ago. And so I understand that there's a lot of discontent about the fact that South Florida, Florida in general, has just exploded over the last 50, 60, 70 years, and it has. And people say, well, we need to cap our population. I've heard that a million times, but the city tried that. Believe me, they years ago, and they were shot down. I think it became a Supreme Court matter because they're like, you can't do that. Right. And so for better or for worse, you can't shut the doors after you move in. And I think a lot of people would like to be able to shut the doors after you moved in, but it's just not. It's not. I can tell you from a legal standpoint that it's just not going to work. And I'm not even a lawyer.
Awesome. So jumping from FAU to something that's actually happening right now, everyone's living through it, so it's not just a one-person thing or anything like that. How do you feel Boca has done during the COVID-19 pandemic? And should you be elected into city council, what are some things that you'd probably do to help assist people trying to get back to life, to quote unquote normal?
That's a good question. Well, Boca is part of a much larger community from a county standpoint, and from a regional standpoint, and from a national standpoint. And so I can't criticize anything that the city has done or hasn't done, just because I realize that it's a really complicated situation. And you have, there's a lot of different people in town that have a lot of different ideas about what works and what doesn't work. And then you have the emotion of fear on top of that. And, I understand the fear, because there's a reality that a lot of people have faced. I mean, what we're looking at throughout the country, 500,000 people who died from or with COVID. And so I can understand where people's heads are at. I really would like to, I'm happy to see that that a lot of our parks and our services have opened back up again. I'd like to see a continued emphasis on opening things up again. I would like to see our city council meeting in person. I think that it can be done in a safe manner. We have the facilities to do it. I think again we can do it safely, and because one of the comments I get from a lot of people is that there isn't a whole lot of participation in city council meetings because there's a process that you got to go through. Granted, the process is really simple. The city clerk's office has provided several different options for getting online, for calling in, for sending emails, for speaking if you want to speak. But it's really not the same as being able to get in front of your city council members and the city staff to talk about what's on your mind, and to be able to look them in the eye, and for the city council people and the city manager and the city attorney to sit on the same dais and to look each other in the eye and to have a conversation. It's so important that we have that eye contact. People kind of discount it, but like even now I'm looking at a camera, I'm not looking at you in the eyes.
Yeah.
So I feel, I know that you and I are having a conversation and it's in real time. But it just isn't the same as that human contact. And we really got to promote the human contact again. And we can do it safely. And, it's not a protest or anything like that. It's something that I think that we really owe it to each other. We owe it to our family's mental health and our community's mental health to be able to get together and to have conversations with each other.
Mm-hmm. So jumping a little bit now to your campaign, if you had to pick 3 campaign issues that you'd say are your main things that you're running with for, what would you say they are?
All right, I would say neighborhoods first. It's not a slogan, but it's something I've definitely learned on the campaign trail, that when you speak with your neighbors in all parts of the county, a big theme that comes out is like, wow, I'm really happy you're here. What can we do? What can we do when you're elected to help our neighborhood get the attention that it needs from the city? How do I get this fixed? How do I get that fixed? And all the resources for getting things fixed are there. Money is an issue always, and it will be an issue. But there's the people in the neighborhoods must come first. A big issue that is coming up for us in Boca Raton is that our city manager will retire in the next few years. It's a big job when you think about the fact that the city has close to 100,000 residents. It's got a budget that runs around $750 million, that's a pretty big corporation. Yeah. It's got hundreds of employees. It has some absolutely amazing responsibilities for people's health. When it comes to our water and making sure our sewer is taken care of, making sure that our trash gets taken away, making sure that that our roads are maintained and our sidewalks are maintained, and that that our laws are enforced. It's under we've got the police department, we got the fire department, we got the whole crew that has all these super important jobs that the city manager is ultimately the boss of. And so I really would like to make sure that we get going as quickly as possible to identify that. I don't know exactly how the city is going to go about that, but we really need to have the conversation right now. It's that important. So I have a couple more issues actually. So I have more than 2, but I'll try to be quick with them. Our downtown CRA is going to sunset in the next few years. It's something that we need to plan for. If there's a debt that the downtown owes to the city, we're going to have to face that. And we have to actually look at how did downtown come out? How do we want it to look? How is it right now? There's a serious community conversation that we need to have going forward. Because when you look back at how the CRA came together around 30 years ago or so, early 90s, there was a certain vision for what the downtown would look like. that vision was flexible enough because what we ended up having was a lot less office and a whole lot more residential. And so, that creates another set of challenges for us to figure out, and we will figure it out. So one of the other issues that I also have is that I know for a fact that our tax revenues from commercial properties will be affected in coming this year, for the simple fact that so many properties have experienced vacancy and problems with tenants paying their rent, and
Right.
issues that created an opportunity for a property owner, and really a need for a property owner to go to the property appraiser's office and to receive a reduction in value. Now, a reduction in value is one thing, but that also reduces the taxes that property pays. And so we are going to need to make some serious decisions in the coming days about, if you have less revenue, what are you going to do? Are you going to raise taxes? I don't think that's going to go over very well. So we're going to have to figure out how to cut expenses. So that's a really important issue. It's going to be a community discussion.
Yeah.
It's not just the city council members who come up with that. It's not just the city manager's office that comes up with that. It's the community, and the community is going to have to hear some truth in all this to understand what it is that's going on. So, it's nothing to be alarmed about. It's just a reality that we got to face, and it fits with the crazy reality that we dealt with in 2020, and we're still dealing with the crazy reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Brian, tell us, for those that don't know, what do you feel are your strengths when it comes to helping out in city council?
I would tell you that I am not afraid to speak out about something. I am not afraid to have a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very important actually to be humble about what we're dealing with and who I am, because I realize that I'm just a resident like you. I'm a guy who lives here. I want to see good things happen for the city. I want to communicate with people about how we make good things happen for the city. I want to listen to people. I'm not going to sit around and argue with them and try to convince them that I'm right. I will say that I would like to help people to figure out how to take a leadership role and to do more than complain. Because like, for instance, I'm a lead on Nextdoor in my neighborhood, and often people get onto Nextdoor and they complain. And I understand complaining, and part the problem that a lot of people have, and the reason they complain, is they don't necessarily know who to turn to. And so it's really important to me to listen to what people have to say, and to say, you can take a role in helping to fix this problem, and here's what you could do. And people respond to that. And some of the people who complain the most end up, writing that email to somebody, or making a suggestion, or showing up, or creating a community forum so that you can talk about what it is you would like to see happen in your neighborhood. And if you have more people do that, and you have more people follow your lead, ultimately you create a stronger fabric in your community that helps other people join in the fun and the work of making your community better.
Yeah. Talking about community, what are your thoughts on expanding the service boundaries of the city?
I think you do that on a case-by-case basis. And a big part of that really has to do with whether expanding the boundaries of the city enhances the tax roll to the point where you're not overwhelming existing services, or you're not having to invest more in or you don't have to invest more in the services you have than you really need. So, I don't particularly have any targeted areas in mind that I would absolutely want to have in the city. But if it came to pass that there was an area that would be a target, then I would listen to it, and I would listen to our city staff. I would listen to our property appraiser. I would listen to our county tax collector. I would listen to the residents that would be subject to annexation, and I would listen to the residents who are already within the city of Boca Raton. And again, that's a big deal because it changes the tax structure for some people who live outside the city limits.
Yeah, for sure. So looking ahead, it's over 3 years. It's the future now. What is your vision for the city in said future?
So the vision for the city is that I would really love to see people in our neighborhoods understand that they have an active role and they must be active participants in the future of our city. And a big part of that is to go out there, to sit down with them, have a cup of coffee, knock on their door, sit in their living room, talk to their neighbors, and basically continue to campaign. That's a lot of what I do right now. Obviously it's a little limited because of people who are really concerned about the COVID. But the fact is that anybody who is serving on the city council ought to continue campaigning. Because that part of the fun of being on the city council is learning about all the ins and outs of the city and understanding how everything ticks. Because you learn as you learn how everything ticks, you can take that knowledge, that wisdom back to your constituents, which in Boca Raton, every single person in the city is a constituent of every single city council member. Right. And it's not, there's so many opportunities to connect with people. And, obviously you don't have to spend every waking hour of every day doing that, but absolutely spend time with people and communicate with them, have a conversation with them. Because one of the things I get from campaigning right now and sitting down with people face to face is that's what people really are dying for right now. They're dying to have a conversation. They just want to talk to somebody. And because so many people are working from home, they've cooped themselves up in their homes or the place they work, it either has closed or they're not able to go back to the office, and they don't have the same human connection. And for me, that gets a little boring after a while. I like to hang out with people. Right.
No, that's a good point. Before I let you go, I've been asking this question to all of the candidates, so you're not going to be any different. What political figure do you admire the most, and why?
I don't put a lot of stock in politicians, because I don't consider myself a politician. And because when you put too much faith in a politician, you're bound to be disappointed, because everybody who runs for office and who serves in office is a human being, and is there's going to be something about them that lets you down. So I honestly can't say that there's ever been a political leader that I am just absolutely enamored with. And I don't want, I don't want people to be enamored with me either. When I'm up there voting, I'm going to vote on some things that you're not happy about, and you're going to want to throw eggs at my house. And that's okay. I appreciate that, because I don't want people I can't stand elevating politicians above, the equal footing that you and I are on, because it's just there's much bigger and better things to have faith in. You have to actually hold your politicians to account. I have my next door neighbor Sonia always tells me, she says, I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire, and I said, I hope you do. I want you to hold me accountable, because I get up here and I say a lot to quote a mailer that came out on me last week, blah blah blah. That's what I do. I talk a lot, and so when I talk a lot, you got to make sure that I'm held to account, and I'm going to hold myself to account too. And if I'm not worried about being admired, trust me.
Right. Well, Brian, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak to us and show yourself and tell more people about yourself. And we're really glad that you took time out of your day today.
Thanks, Pedro. I appreciate your time too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Don't forget, guys, voting is on March 9th. Make sure to go out and vote because your vote counts.
Absolutely.
Take care now.
You too. Thanks.